Hello and welcome everybody to our Parents and Carers session with Lisa Duffin. Today's session is Changing Societies and the Role of Carer. I just want to introduce Lisa to you all. So Lisa is a certified parent coach with an MSc in educational psychology and child development. She has a wealth of experience working globally with children and adults in educational settings, mental health settings and challenging behaviour units. She's also a qualified NLP practitioner, Line Therapy Practitioner, and she's also trained in hypnosis and EFT. The coupling of her education in neuroscience, learning and behaviour, and experience working with numerous coaching modalities means she offers a valuable service that is grounded in science, is transformational, and truly one we can trust. Her work includes delivering group workshops like today and training, as well as one-to-one work with parents. This is the final session that we're going to run with Lisa for this particular section, so we want to thank her and yeah, thank you for engaging with us at Middlesex. We're really grateful.
Thank you, Chrissy, and thank you all for joining me today. I do, as usual, have some slides, so let me just bring those up. There we go. And I'll just stop my video for this portion and put it back on again at the end. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about the role of carer and specifically informal carers. The challenge of how we care for our sick and elderly is becoming a more pressing and a more complicated issue with each passing year. And what is often overlooked or emphasized less is caring for the caregiver. So today that will be our focus. So over the course of the next 20 to 30 minutes or so, I will cover the reality of being an informal carer today, the identity of carer from a psychological viewpoint, and then we'll look at some steps we can take to support ourselves as carer. So to get started, to be cared for and to care for others is a fact of life. We will all experience this reality throughout our lifetime. Each of us will care for someone or be cared for by someone or both. It is a part of the human experience. It always has been part of the human experience. And yet I think most of us can acknowledge that to be a carer, whether paid or unpaid in today's society, is becoming incredibly difficult. As we all know, society has evolved massively in some ways over the last 6 or 7 decades. And we now have more women in the workforce, for example. Our basic standards of living have increased, and scientific progression has meant that we are now better equipped than ever before to treat medical conditions. With all of these advancements, the structures that make up society have seen some changes too, and perhaps none more than the family unit. So the average family size has decreased and has now reached 1.89 children. That's according to the Office of National Statistics. And with urbanization, we have also seen people flock to cities for work, meaning that generally there is a wider geographical spread of families. And coupled with these changes is the reality that life expectancy in the UK is increasing. So from 2017 to 2019, the average life expectancy was 79.4 years for males and 83.1 years for females. So as well as this, we now have more people than ever before living with chronic conditions. So then the questions become, how do we care for our aging population, our aging parents or our ill family members when we have to work? How do we manage the care for our elderly parents when we live in different places? How do we share this care when there are less family members or siblings to help? Look, I don't know the answer to any of these questions because there are no simple solutions. It seems to me that there are societal changes that need to happen, and understandably, those take time. Until then, what we can do is support one another and equip ourselves with the inner resources needed to see us through this very human life experience of caring for others. So that's a bit of context. Let's break it down a bit further. So what do caregivers need most other than help with caregiving and financial support? Well, there are three things: emotional support, recognition and understanding, and time to recharge. So those are three things that I can give you to some degree today. And believe it or not, they are also three things you can give to yourself today. So to help do this, I'd like to share a personal story with you. So in my lifetime, I've been both an unpaid carer and a paid carer. So I think I mentioned this in the Q&A section on one of my last talks. So some of you might be familiar with my own personal story, but for those who aren't, when I was 17, my mum was diagnosed with cancer. And I was in my final year of school and was applying for university places when she got the diagnosis. And I obviously wanted to help her in any way I could. And so I embraced taking her to appointments and then dropping her to the hospital for treatment before I would then go to school, and then picking her up again afterwards and caring for her during those awful few days of physical illness after a chemo session. So my dad had to continue to work to help support us financially, and my brother was too young at the time to help. On top of that, my dad and my brother also hate being in hospitals. So there was never a question that I would be the one that would help mum. In fact, I don't even remember it ever being discussed. It was just assumed. So my mum wanted to keep her diagnosis secret, and I didn't understand it at the time. But I later realized it was her way of taking back some semblance of control. It was her way of feeling less like a victim, I guess. She did tell one of her sisters, but beyond this, I was told not to tell anyone about it. And I specifically remember one time arguing with my mum that it wasn't fair that I couldn't tell anyone, that I needed to talk to someone myself to process what I was living. And my dad and my brother didn't speak about it in any depth. And so I remember feeling incredibly alone at times. I had very strong feelings of frustration and anger towards my mum at that point, which I remember feeling really conflicted over. I can remember thinking, how can I be angry and frustrated at my mum when she's suffering? I can remember thinking I have no right to feel this way. And all of these conversations I was having with myself, and then all the guilt I was feeling for even having these thoughts and these conversations with myself. And there definitely were times when I felt the role of carer was enforced upon me. So then my mum's treatment ended up being extended, and I decided to defer uni and take a job beside home as a part-time receptionist in a medical centre, so I could care for my mum and help with the household bills. And I watched all my school friends leave and go to uni, and so I absorbed then the role of part-time carer and part-time worker. And thankfully then my mum responded to treatment and was well enough for me to leave and go to uni the next year. And it was suggested at that point by various family members that I should change my uni course to nursing or something in the medical profession, because in their eyes, I was very good at caring for my mum. But I rejected the idea completely. Like it wasn't even a question that I would consider, because I saw it as a full-time carer, and instead went down the route of human sciences. Now, unfortunately, a few years later, when I was at uni, my mum relapsed just as I was finishing uni and planning to travel to Australia. And again, I changed my plans and moved home and became part-time carer, part-time worker. And so my sense of identity and perception of my role changed again. And I moved through what I know now is the cognitive processing of, is this something I'm embracing this time? Is it something I feel is being enforced upon me? Have I absorbed it? And ironically, after rejecting the suggestions to change my undergrad course to nursing, I ended up working in a mental health institution as a key worker for children during that second bout of my mum's illness. So I ended up really being a full-time carer, part paid and part unpaid. I should add that thankfully, very thankfully, my mum made a full recovery after that. And I can genuinely say that we both came out mentally and emotionally stronger, and our relationship is great. For those of you who are carers or have been, I want to ask you, do you relate to those conflicting feelings of a deep desire to help your loved one, but at the same time, overwhelming levels of frustration and anger, and sometimes feeling trapped? You don't have to type it in the chat box, but do ask yourself if you have had or have these feelings. If you have, I want you to know that is normal. Having those feelings is normal. It is part of being a human being, a human processing. And having the feelings in and of themselves is not an issue. It only becomes an issue when we repress those emotions and instead feel guilty for even feeling them. If we don't acknowledge them as valid feelings and instead repress them, they have the real potential to impact our behaviour towards ourselves and towards our loved ones. So the best thing that we can do is to shine a light on them. So if you're a carer and you're listening to this now, ask yourself, do I feel conflicted? What exactly do I feel? And where do I feel it in my body right now? If you do take one thing away from today, I'd like it to be this. Get into the habit of checking in with yourself daily, even hourly, in the exact same way you do with the person you are caring for. I'm sure you ask that person hundreds of times a day, how are you? Are you okay? Get into the habit of asking yourself the same questions. I explained a little bit about this line, this line of questioning does in terms of brain and nervous system regulation in my talk on parental resilience a few weeks ago. So please feel free to refer to that talk for more of the neuroscience, as it is applicable to carers also. It's framed in the context of parenting, but it works the same way. So you may have also noticed that in my personal account, I talked about how I grappled with the role of carer. And at times, as I noted, I embraced it. At times, I felt it was enforced upon me. Other times, I became so absorbed in the role that I no longer knew where the role ended and I, as a person, began. And at times, I rejected the role completely, as I mentioned, when it was suggested that I should go on to become a professional carer. And all of this I share to emphasize that caring for someone is a journey. you will go through periods in your journey where your relationship with the role changes. Again, I want to stress the importance of checking in with yourself frequently without judgment. Ask yourself, where am I with this now? Where am I on my journey now, my caring journey now? So is the role of carer embraced, enforced, absorbed, or rejected? And let wherever you are in your journey right now, be okay. Just safe in the knowledge that it will change at some point, as it is a process. I also want to recognize how lonely it can feel when you are a carer. It really is lonely at times. I do want to note, however, that it is important to remember that you're not alone. 1 in 8 adults, so that's around 6.5 million people, are informal carers. Every day, another 6,000 people take on caring responsibility. That equals over 2 million people each year. I mean, those numbers to me are staggering. 58% of carers are women and 42% are men. 1.3 million people provide over 50 hours of care per week. And if those people are working full-time jobs as well, how many hours do they have for themselves after both of those responsibilities are taken care of? Over 1 million people care for more than one person. And as of 2020, Carers UK estimates that there are around 13.6 million people caring throughout the pandemic. So I don't think it's an exaggeration at all to say that without informal carers, our health and social systems would crumble, literally crumble. And yet our carers are largely going unrecognized. So in the absence of recognition from others, I want to encourage you to recognize yourself. I want you to recognize that you are living in courage every day. And that is not easy. It should be acknowledged first and foremost by yourself. The inner strength and the resilience needed to live this life should not be minimized. When we do minimize it, we risk things like compassion fatigue and caregiver burnout. So what I want you to do now is to take a moment to recognize the strength and courage within you. And if you feel resistance to doing this, if you feel embarrassed or it makes you feel like you want to shift about in your chair and you just don't want to do it at all, I'd say that is a real signal that you need to do this. So take a moment now. You can close your eyes if you wish and acknowledge what you're doing. Caring for another is a courageous act. Okay, so now that we have acknowledged our courage, and even if it feels icky, please continue to do that, because that is the reality. If you're getting up every morning and caring for someone, even day after day, even when you feel like you can't do it any longer, that is courage. So try and acknowledge it over and over and over again. We can do a little exercise now quickly to help regulate our nervous system. And this exercise is easy and it's so simple that it is often overlooked. You see, the thing is that we already have the inner tools at our disposal. We just forget to use them sometimes. And that's what I'm going to help you with today. So this tool that I'm referring to in this instance is, of course, our breath. So we're going to become conscious of our breathing in order to regulate our nervous system, because if you are a carer, the chances are you're dealing with some level of nervous system dysregulation. So today, together now, we will use a breathing pattern of one-to-one breathing. So if you just want to get comfortable in your chair, don't worry if you're multitasking and you can't do this now, that's perfectly fine. But if you can do it now, just get comfy in the chair that you're sitting in. I want you to slowly close your eyes if you wish to, and just let them relax. And begin to focus on your breath. Just allowing the body to breathe on its own in and out of the nose. Allowing the body to be just as it is without trying to change anything. Then begin to count the length of your inhale. How many counts does it take to breathe in? Then begin to count the length of your exhale. How many counts does it take to breathe out? And then just notice which is longer today, your inhale or your exhale. And then if you feel ready, begin to lengthen both the inhalation and the exhalation slightly, just by one count. And if this new breath feels comfortable, then stay there. Otherwise, just go back to where it was comfortable for you, because we're not trying to force the breath to do anything. If we do force it, it tightens the diaphragm, the neck, and the face muscles, and it will actually stimulate the nervous system, which is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do here. So relax a little through the body and keep the pace where it's slightly lengthened, but you feel comfortable. And then bringing your awareness to the part of the breath that is shorter, whether that is the inhalation or the exhalation, and seeing if you can lengthen that by one count. And you'll increase it until the inhalation count and the exhalation count match. Doing this slowly. Remember to bring a sense of kindness to yourself. So if it feels difficult, then honor that and just return to the length of inhalation and exhalation that feels comfortable. Staying with this practice for another few moments. Notice how your body is feeling and what your mind is doing. Excellent. So slowly open your eyes now if you had them closed. So this simple exercise of one-to-one breathing is a hugely effective tool in calming down an elevated nervous system. As carers, we can care for ourselves by consciously utilizing our breath consistently and frequently. The final thing that I want to offer you today is an opportunity to tune in to your own needs. There are 6 basic human needs outlined here. The first one, certainty. Second, love and connection. Third, variety. Fourth, the need for significance. Fifth, the need for contribution. And sixth, the need for growth. When we are caring for someone else, it is highly likely that our need to contribute is being overmet, while our needs for variety, for love and connection, for significance, for example, are going unmet totally, meaning that we will feel off balance. Now, human needs and self-care are huge topics in and of themselves. So today I just want to leave you with this. I want you to, again, close your eyes if you wish, to place your hand on your heart, and without overthinking, without judgment, without analyzing or rationalizing, I want you to ask yourself, what do I need most right now? And trust that the first thing that comes to mind is the right thing. And whatever came to mind for you, can you give that to yourself today? Again, frequently tuning in like this and asking yourself this question will help you stay regulated and will help you stay healthy so that you can continue to care for your loved ones. So I trust that you took something from the last 30 minutes or so and you're feeling a little more supported, a little more understood if you're a carer, and with those exercises, a little bit calmer. To summarize, I'd like to share some takeaways. So caring for a loved one is a very humbling experience, as many of you will know. It shapes you, there's no doubt about that. It awards an opportunity to see yourself in a different light, and it makes you realize how truly resilient we humans are. It is perfectly normal to sometimes feel annoyed, frustrated, trapped, insert any other feeling, by the needs of aging or unwell loved ones. And it doesn't mean you are inherently selfish. It means you're processing and coming to terms with your current reality. Thirdly, empathy is key. Try to empathize with yourself if you don't always feel like embracing the role. And finally, become aware of your own unmet needs and address these first. So thank you for listening and participating, and sincerely thank you for all that you do in caring for others. As with all of these talks, we are only really scratching the surface. We could go so much deeper with a longer session. You may have some questions now, or you may find that once you've gone away and digested it and thought about the content and maybe used some of these tools that I've given you today, these simple tools in your everyday life, that you have another question that comes to mind. And that's fine, you can reach out to me on email. But I do, as I said, I do have a few moments now to speak if anyone has any questions. So I'll stop sharing my slides and I'll put my camera back on. There we go.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
No problem.